Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Saturday, September the 14th, which makes this the news for Friday, September 13th, 2024, day 934 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And the peeps are coming in. Hey, G2. Hey, Lars. Hey, Robbo. Hey, Bobby. How you doing there, Cheyenne? Rabid and Frisky. All right, there's a combination. Mr. Stanley, how you doing? Bjorn, hey, Mel. Hey, Renee Herman. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Paul Smith. Not Peter Smith, Paul Smith. Hey, Gilbert. Anthony Tommy Tom. Hey, Eli. Cheyenne, Trash Hunter. Buenas noches. To our friend in Spain. Hey, Darlene. Liam. Evening. How is everybody? Boy, I'll tell you, can I tell you guys something? Hey, Richard Prexis. Hey, Avery. Since it's mostly the peeps that are here right now, let me just mention as an aside, I posted 2 videos tonight, right? Hey, Hobo. And the first one takes off. It's got 900 views like a normal video, right? Next one, 50. I don't know how the Russian bot farms work. I don't know how they throttle the video views, how they downvote them or whatever. But it is insidious. It is absolutely insidious. Hey, Blue Ariel Silk. Hey, Chef Deb. Hey, Birdie. Shoot. Let me do that real quick. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody have a good Friday the 13th? I always loved a Friday the 13th, personally. I did not have any black cats cross my path today. I didn't have any problems with witches or anything. All right. Dave Howell and Cynthia Rios are our sponsors tonight. It's a lucky day for the cats are in hiding. The cats are in hiding from the maggots out there. Unreal. Hey, Pedro. So, guys, this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. I'm Peter Alexievich. And it is Friday, September the 13th. This is the news for Friday, September the 13th, day 934 of Russia's war of aggression. We don't know, Wind, what the situation is with the ATACMS. But what we do know is that, so a couple of things. Russia is this is the thing that does piss me off about living in a transparent Western democracy, right, where we have to build consensus to get anything done. It just telegraphs to the enemy what we are up to. Just absolutely telegraphs it to them. And so what we see happening is we see the Russians have now moved 95% of their planes farther east out of ATACMS and Storm Shadow range. The Russians are anticipating, clearly, the Russians are anticipating that the West is going to finally take the handcuffs off of Ukraine and authorize long-range strikes into Russia. Now, when that's going to happen is another story. I suggested last night that we should not expect a big announcement today, even though Starmer and Biden met today. And at this time, we still have no announcement. So Blinken had signaled yesterday or the day before that we shouldn't really expect to hear anything until after the UN General Assembly or at the UN General Assembly. And so the UN General Assembly happens from the 10th to the 30th of this month. There's a lot of activities. It all culminates in about 2 weeks. And so it's entirely possible that we all are going to have to cool our jets and wait another 2 weeks. It's almost like they want to give the Russians enough time to move all the strategic assets that they possibly can back. Now, somebody says something amazingly stupid. Maybe they are clearing the area for nukes. Okay, now dig it. Let's talk about nukes for a second. Because our good buddy, Hamish DeBretton Gordon, was on the podcast Ukraine the Latest today. And what we have always said, we've always thought what the threat has been is the use of a tactical nuclear weapon, right? That's what we're worried about. Not a strategic, right? They're not going to send an ICBM up over the North Pole to DC. That's not going to happen. They'd use a tactical nuke on the battlefield. But get this. How are those tactical nukes launched? They're launched using Iskander missiles. Iskander missiles have a limited range. If we give the Ukrainians permissions for long-range strikes into Russia, suddenly that neutralizes their nuclear capability because the nuclear targets are within range of the long-range missiles. So if you want to stop the nuclear bullshit, if you want to stop the attempts, the pathetic, sad attempts at nuclear blackmail that the Russian Federation keeps trying, all we have to do is authorize the use of long-range strikes into Russia, and suddenly all of the planes that could launch an Iskander with a nuclear warhead are within range of those long-range strikes, and the entire threat goes away. I gotta tell you, that was some genuine insight for me today. Right, Colin? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Enough is enough with this bullshit. But he is running his mouth, boy. Our boy, sad, mad, bad Vlad. He has said that if the West authorizes those long-range missile strikes into Russia, that the West is effectively at war with Russia. What the fuck? Like it matters? Like it matters. How could it matter? These guys can't handle Ukraine. Does anybody in their right mind think that they could handle an all-out conflict with NATO? It's nonsense. It's nonsense of the first order. And we have got to stop micromanaging the Ukrainians. We have to trust our allies in Kyiv. We've got to trust the Ukrainians. And we have got to take the gloves off. By Putin's logic, right? Ukraine is already at war with Iran and North Korea. And China, for that matter. We talked about, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about it last night, right? That the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State has accused the Chinese of supporting the Russians in covert ways with lethal aid. Now, to that point, Reuters broke today that Russia has a new drone. It's called the Harpy. Now, you may also see it referred to as the Garipi. And that is because the Russians, they don't distinguish between G and H the way that we do in the West, believe it or not. It's a curious thing. But it is the Harpy drone. And this drone has a 1,500 kilometer range. But that is not what makes it interesting, the fact that it's a long-range drone. No. What makes it interesting is that it is run with Chinese engines. What does this say? It's made with Chinese engines and parts. Production, according to Reuters sources, familiar with the matter, production began last year and they have produced 2,500, are believed to have been produced by this date. But the whole thing is a Chinese drone built with Chinese parts, Chinese engines, supplied to Russia under sanctions in, you're funny, Blue Ariel Sill. Right, ordered from Alibaba, Colin, I swear to God. Now, again, Russia is saying that if we permit long-range strikes into Russia, then Russia's at war with us. Well, shouldn't Ukraine see itself at war with Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia at this point? And Russia hasn't even had the balls to call it a war. They call it the special military operation for a bunch of legal bullshit reasons that mean that Putin has more control. The military doesn't have control. He can leave the FSB in control, the people that he trusts in control. It's outrageous. The whole thing is outrageous. And it is about time that we stood up and grew a pair. He is clearly getting desperate, Putin. One of the things that happened today in advance of the long-range strike capability being granted to Ukraine was that the FSB ejected half a dozen British diplomats. They did not accuse them of anything. They didn't actually say that they were spies. They were very, vague about why they were being expelled. Basically on suspicion of sabotage and intelligence gathering, designed to deliver a strategic defeat to Russia. This is all happening as the British are trying to convince DC to release the holds on long-range strikes. And it appears that we may have reached some consensus on that. Putin, in response, has said he's done a little nuclear saber rattling and he's threatened the West with war as if he could take on another opponent, which he can't. And again, for those just joining us, because I see a bunch of people just came in, it is critical to be aware, as I became today, thanks to the good work of Hamish DeBrett and Gordon, that the very fact of Ukraine having the capability of long-range strikes into Russia neuters Russia's entire nuclear threat. Because then the tools that they would need, the weapons that they would need to launch those tactical nukes at Ukraine are now within the long-range weapons reach. And so if you want to stop Russia from threatening us with nukes every night on the TV, untie the Ukrainians' hands, trust our allies, enable their long-range strike capabilities into Russia, trust them with the weapons that they already have. That's all we have to do. And this whole thing changes. The tempo of it changes, the pace of it changes, and the outcome of it changes instantly for the Ukrainians, on behalf of the Ukrainians. The very fact of it will change the attitudes inside of Moscow. Just the threat of it is already changing their behavior, as we have seen them move 95% of their planes out of ATACMS and Storm Shadow range. Which is great, right? It's a result. Right off the bat, it's a result. It's a result because now that means those planes have to fly twice as far every time they go on a bombing sortie. If you got to fly twice as far, that means you can only do half as many runs. So get them as far from the border as we can. In Kursk, there have been marginal gains on both sides. The Russians continue to make marginal gains southwest of Koronovo. However, the ISW has pointed out that the areas the Russians are advancing in were not ever in full control of the Ukrainians. They were gray zone, basically gray zone areas in the first place. Russian units are beginning to start the counteroffensive operations there. However, I would point out to everybody that those Russian counteroffensive operations are all in the west, south of the same river where the Russian troops are trapped anyway. They're trapped and cut off from their ground lines of communication. They can't get resupplied. They can't get more ammunition. And it looks to me less like an intelligent, planned counteroffensive. It looks more like the desperation of trapped rats that don't know what else to do but lash out at the thing that has them trapped in the corner. I don't know that these attacks are coming with some strategic goal in mind or under the direction of Moscow at all. As far as we can see, Moscow's response in Kursk has been slow, chaotic, and ineffective. And I don't know that what's currently happening is even under the direction of the Kremlin. And it's not just the desperation of those who are trapped. On the subject of the desperation of those who are trapped, the Russians just keep trying to put pontoon bridges up, and the Ukrainians just keep whacking them down. And so we got more video today of pontoon bridges being hit by HIMARS. It wasn't just the pontoon bridges either. There was a troop concentration attempting to cross a pontoon bridge. So it was about 30 troops with a couple of armored vehicles. And the whole group was taken out with cluster munitions. Hey, Doc, what are you laughing at? What'd I say that was so funny? Elements of the 106th Airborne have been redeployed to Kursk, purportedly to assist in the counteroffensive. Now, this is according to Russian mill bloggers, that these VDV troops are moving in. And if so, these are some of the best troops that Russia still has. And it looks like Russia is deploying some of its best troops in order to deal with Kursk. Now, what their effectiveness will be, as Doc Hayes pointed out the other day, the whole environment out there is flat and open and provides a maneuver warfare advantage to the side that can conduct real maneuver warfare. And that the only people that have demonstrated any ability in this conflict to do that are the Ukrainians. And so being in this terrain, in this space, appears to be an advantage to the Ukrainians. Russia continues attacks on Kyiv. According to the Ukrainians, we are now seeing conscripts on the front line in Kyiv. Now, the ISW said it could not confirm the presence of those conscripts there. However, if this is true, this is only because Putin just changed the law on this, right? To let conscripts participate in the special military operation. By definition and by default, conscripts are not supposed to participate in active fighting, especially outside of Russia on foreign soil. That's a violation of the social contract that Putin has with the Russian people. But it appears that he is so desperate for the lives of men to throw away in his meat grinder nightmare that we may be seeing a young generation of Muscovites thrown away on the front line in Kharkiv. No gains in the Pokrovsk directive, no meaningful gains in the Pokrovsk direction. Although the Russians have cut the water off to Pokrovsk, and evacuation is recommended for all civilians in Pokrovsk. So if anybody knows anybody that's still there, it is time to get the fuck out. The trains have all been shut down. They are being used only for civilian and military use, civilian evacuation and military use. So those are the only trains running in and out of Pokrovsk, and it is recommended that people get their asses on them. Zelensky criticized NATO, saying, I do love the tongue-in-cheek kind of satire of the Ukrainians, saying that so far, the only country besides Ukraine to successfully shoot down Russian drones entering their territory is Belarus. And that is accurate. That is accurate. We have seen drones and missiles land in the territory of Poland, Romania, Moldova, and nobody shot anything down. Nobody. Now, there is a growing chorus of voices in the international community, particularly the Baltic states, who would like to see, Baltic states and Poland, who would like to see some engagement there, some NATO engagement, shooting down missiles that approach their territories. Missiles and drones. With that background in mind, Poland is now also adding its voice to the chorus calling for DC, London, and Paris to end the restrictions on long-range strikes into Russia. Does Russia shooting down their own drones count? I don't know that they've shot down their own drones, Bobby. They sure as hell can't shoot down the Ukrainian drones, can they? What does that say, I wonder? I should have been a doctor. Oh, we already talked about this. That just talking about long-range strikes into Russia is affecting Russian behavior. 95% of the planes have been moved outside of ATACMS range, which is good, right? Is what bad, Adam? I don't know what you're talking about. Is what bad? Russians shoot on civilian planes in Murmansk airspace. That could be. Ask the folks on MH17, boy. They'll shoot at civilians, that's for sure. In Romania, we don't have the legislation necessary for getting those drones down. Well, somebody in the parliament ought to write it then, if it requires some legislation. I don't know why it would require legislation. You're under attack, goddammit. You're under attack. Make no mistake, we are all under attack by the Russian Federation. These bastards they are the termites that have been eating at the foundations of our Western democracy for so long that somebody like Donald Trump could get elected president. Yeah. Yeah, Pedro, we're all annoyed. Welcome to politics. What are you going to do, pal? We're all doing everything we can, right? We're calling the White House, we're calling the senators, we're calling our Congress people. We're telling them, this is what we, the people, want. I am in Kyiv, Elliot, yes. Now, in that interview that I was listening to today with Hamish DeBretton Gordon, He said that he was talking to commanders of Ukrainian armed forces in the southern district and in Donetsk. And both of these guys made the claim that Ukraine is being hit 2 to 3 times a day with chemical weapons, with CS gas. And what's the other one? Chlorprenison, which is a bad one. That'll kill you in the trench. 447 attacks using these chemical weapons have been documented in August alone. And Hamish de Bretton Gordon, along with his British counterparts, are working on supplying gas masks to the Ukrainian army. So there is an effort underway to get gas masks and training in their proper use to the front lines. Ukraine reports today that it has the highest global mortality rate and lowest birth rate. The mortality rate in this country is 18.6 per 1,000 people. Nearly 20 people out of 1,000 will have passed away in the next year, while only 6 babies have been born to replace them out of 1,000. That's a deficit of 12.6 births for an equal number of deaths. That's huge. It's 3 times the number of deaths as births. That's a problem. That now, legitimately, a lot of the childbearing population is out of the country. And so those births are not being recorded here. They're happening in Germany and in Poland and in the UK. But it's a bad sign for the long-term viability of this culture. It does these people no good to fight and die and sacrifice themselves to save the culture and then have it whittled away by a reverse pyramid population demographics. That's no good. No good at all. The sooner this war ends, the sooner the 7 million Ukrainians that are in exile, more of them will come home. I do think, too, that Ukraine is going to have a manpower shortage and crisis after this war. And I think that one of the things that Ukraine might consider doing is opening its doors to immigration in a way that many European countries don't do, in a way that's more like the U.S. model. Bring those immigrants in. Make them Ukrainian. Give them all the rights and privileges thereof and responsibilities. And grow this nation. It'll be the biggest in the European Union. It doesn't have to be the most empty. That's a question for the Ukrainians to decide, of course. Just a thought. There's too many that haven't, Florenta. Too many that aren't. And then those that do, it's not always a success story. Pokrovsk is a great example. Kyiv is a great example. In Pokrovsk, you had 50,000 people evacuate, and 35,000 of them came back. Now they're evacuating again. In Kyiv, hundreds of thousands evacuated. 150,000 came back. Now some are leaving again because of the shelling, right? Or the constant missile attacks, rather. They're not in shelling range, but the constant missile attacks. Russia returned 49 Ukrainians from captivity. These were a mixed bunch. This wasn't a POW swap. It was just the return of 49 captured Ukrainians, some from the Ukrainian armed forces, some from the National Guard, some from the National Police, some from the State Border Guard Service, and some civilians. J.D. Vance, what a piece of shit, huh? So J.D. Vance has a plan for Ukrainian peace, and it's simple. Ukraine should surrender and let Russia win and give them everything that they want. Freeze the line where it is, let Russia take all of that territory, and also, by the way, never join NATO, you bad boys in Ukraine. This unbelievable, ass-kissing Russian piece of shit. It's unreal. Did you see the guy? He was in an interview after the debate, and it was after Taylor Swift endorsed Harris. And he actually, in the interview, said the words. I mean, I think people like her music and stuff, and that's fine. But I don't think the American people are interested in the opinions of a billionaire detached from reality. Billionaire celebrity detached from reality. This fucking guy has no sense of irony at all, does he? Because that's who he works for, is a billionaire celebrity detached from reality. Exactly, Russell. Exactly. No sense of irony. That's the problem with the far right. No sense of the sardonic at all. Blinken says, almost in response to J.D. Vance's comments, Blinken said here in Kyiv that Ukraine will be in NATO, that the path to NATO membership for Ukraine is assured, and Ukraine will be in NATO. Shoigu is in North Korea. We can guess what they talked about, but we don't really know. He is the Russians, this axis of evil, Iran, Russia, and North Korea, continues to deepen their military and technological ties. And it should worry all of us. It should worry all of us. I was very happy to see that the Toronto International Film Festival has suspended screenings of the Russian propaganda show, Russian propaganda film, Russians at War. Well done. A little bit late, Toronto, but better late than never. Good. This is unbelievable to me on the subject of Russian war crimes. The city of Kherson used to be a bustling city of 300,000. It is basically a ghost town now. And the Russians, for their part, they are playing the most serious game you can imagine. They are hunting individual civilians with drones. I cannot even. Glory to Russia, huh? So there's two things here. There's Common Travel Guy, who I guess just brought a van into Ukraine with some aid in Odessa. And he'd like to hop on the live for 5 minutes. Give me a second here. Where are we at with the time? Let me finish up the news first. And then, let's bring you in. And then Pedro the Amigo asks, isn't UK okay with attacking Russia? Or was Joey being too excited? Now, I don't want to comment on... I certainly don't want to say anything negative about Joey Contino. Joey Contino does a hell of a job. But I do think he jumped the gun yesterday with that report. As I said yesterday, we shouldn't expect a big announcement today, and we did not get one. That we should anticipate maybe something around the end of the UN General Assembly, so in about 2 weeks. And I think that's the timeline that we're on for this thing. I don't know. It would be nice to get an okay sooner. But it's entirely possible that they're going to give the Ukrainians the green light. The Ukrainians will make a hit, and then we'll all find out about it together. Try to preserve some element of surprise. But I don't know. We shall see. Finland has come up with 118 million euros in an aid package for Ukraine. Finland does not disclose the contents of its aid packages nor their timelines for delivery before they are delivered. So we don't know what's coming from Finland, but it's worth 118 million euros. Kamala Harris, last item. And then PT, can we get Common Travel Guy in the box, please? Kamala Harris has come out with a bunch of new ads that are all focused on Ukraine. And they are focused on standing up to dictators, protecting our allies, and keeping us all safe. And they're not bad, right? They're good little 30-second spots, I thought. And they stand in stark contrast to the blatant appeasement of the far-right maggot crowd and J.D. Vance's comments, which I just thought were so disconnected from reality. Hey, how you doing, pal?
Hello, Peter. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for bringing me into live. I just wanted to have well, first of all, your video, you spoke a lot of logic. Basically, I was scrolling through TikTok just as I'm going to bed. I'm keeping up on the news with the Storm Shadow missiles possibly being able to be used over the border in Russia. I saw a video from Dylan Page, News Daddy. I think we all know Dylan Page. He doesn't really post much about Ukraine, and I saw his video, then yours. So I've made a video tagging you both in it, sort of talking about your logic and his lack of understanding for what's happening on the ground. Like you said, Mad Vlad and his Kremlin cronies aren't going to use nuclear weapons. Also, with the van, I was helping Dutch Cossack, who you know.
Oh, is that Dutch's van?
Yeah, I helped him with
Nice.
getting the supplies, and he got me a lift to Warsaw, and then from Warsaw I made my way back over the border into Ukraine. I'm just a small volunteer. I do volunteer work for Food for Life here in Odessa, going down to Kherson. Basically, I just wanted to come in, say thank you so much for having me, and basically just say hello, and just to let you know I did that video. Like,
Right on. I'll have to check it out. I did respond to that kid, the kid with the 12 million followers.
yeah.
Right. I don't know who he is. That was the first time I ever heard of him.
Well,
But
Dylan Page, he's good at what he does. He's got to 12 million followers for a reason. But this kid is, I'm not going to swear, but only the other week is talking about going to North Korea because North Korea is going to allow tourists in again. He's doing videos about North Korea, and he barely does any news when it comes to Ukraine. It's called News Daddy. He's trying to compete with actual established news organizations such as Kyiv Independent, BBC, Sky News, etc. And the thing is, he's not a real news account, in my opinion. He will put videos up saying, guys, at the end of his videos, he'll put like, I'll keep you updated. Sometimes the update doesn't come. It's like, dude, come on. And then he put this video up about Ukraine, about the escalation, and it actually it rubbed me the wrong way because we're here on the ground and he doesn't understand.
it has no content. It's just sensationalist clickbait. Ooh, will Russia nuke us all?
Yeah.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's how he got to 12 million viewers, right? With sensationalist clickbait.
Yeah. You see, my content, mostly I'm just posting about my volunteer journey. But then I put a video up of an explosion. Oh, that gets 200,000 views. Mostly I'm just sharing the volunteer work I'm doing. But maybe I need to do better with getting the sort of like fighting the information side of the war myself. But mostly what I'm doing is just focusing on the volunteer work whilst I'm over here.
I mean, I would argue, or I might suggest to you, that the reality of the need for you, the need for that food, the need for those medical supplies, the way that people are living that requires us to do these extra things is the evidence of what life in Ukraine is like. And if you can talk to the people that are affected by this war, that's genuine. You know, that's what people need to see.
Yeah.
Shadow Hunter is saying there that the latest news is that the U.S. just announced no change in missile policy. And again, now hang on, everybody, right? I said this yesterday, that I did not think we should expect any big announcements today. That Blinken was pretty clearly signaling that we shouldn't expect any public announcement until after the UN General Assembly, or possibly at the UN General Assembly. It could be that we'll see some people give some speeches on the floor with the whole UN in session, and then the announcements come once consensus has been built among a broader channel of supporters. As Steve McStevens is saying there, keep Putin guessing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, Peter, I won't take up too much of your time. I'm going to try and get an early night's sleep.
Too late.
I mostly just wanted to come in, let you know about that video with Dylan Page. And obviously, for me, it's just like, I saw his video, then yours, and I was like, obviously, I'm following your videos a lot. Maybe I'm fanboying a bit right now. Well, I'll tell you what. When I'm in Kyiv, I'll give you a shout and I'll grab you a pint anyway.
Yeah, pal. If you're coming to Kyiv, give me a shout, would you?
I will do, definitely. Anyway, for now, дуже дякую, honor вечір, до побачення, на добраніч, слава Україні.
Slava Heroam Slava. Why can't I think of that? Dobro noche.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Good night.
Good night. Okay. Good night. Another Branich. Night, man. Thanks for having me on anyway. Thank you.
Thanks for dropping by, pal. Simon Templar here is mentioning Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, is saying that Russia has to give back Crimea. And Simon, it's important to recognize that that has been his position since 2014. Remember, Crimea, the Crimean Tatars are Muslim. And so very much Erdogan comes down on the side of his Muslim brothers. And he wants to see Crimea free or back in the hands of the Ukrainians. What happened with all the Patriot systems that were pledged to Ukraine? They have not been delivered. That's what happened. Not even the one from next door in Romania. Now, the Romanians have finally passed the legislation and the president has signed it, and it should be on its way. But when it gets here is anybody's guess. According to Zelensky and Kuleba, none of the pledged Patriots, other than the original 4, I think. We believe that there's 4, if I'm not mistaken, in country. None of the additional ones that have been pledged have been delivered. Everybody takes the press op. They take the photo opportunity. They get the press. Oh, look at us. We're doing so much good for Ukraine. And then we're sitting here with our thumbs up our asses fucking 6 months later watching missiles rain down on us. Unreal. Bobby says you shouldn't get people's hopes up, then dashed. Why would Blinken go to Kyiv without an announcement? Bobby, Blinken's never said a word about approving long-range weapons. All he has said when asked about it is stay tuned until after the UN General Assembly. That's all he has said. He's not the one starting these rumors. These rumors come from McCall, who I forget his he's on one of the foreign services committees. And I honestly, I can't even remember. He's in the House of Representatives, McCall. And he's on one of the foreign services committees. And he's the one who opened his mouth about this the other day. It wasn't Blinken. So I would not blame Blinken for that. But you're right. Let's not get people's hopes up. Although it has happened repeatedly. Why do they not deliver? I wish I knew, Simon. I wish I knew. Have wars in the past had this much red tape? Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And, remember World War II, right? We were in the same political situation in the United States. We had the America First movement pushing isolationism, pushing us not to get involved. And then you had the patriots that were willing to fight and defeat fascism rather than invited into Madison Square Garden and Heil Hitler it. Hey, Clay Fry, how you doing, pal? Okay, now let's see, because we are running out of time. So before we do, I want to take a minute here and I want to thank the sponsors of tonight's live, Cynthia Beatricella and Dave Howell. Thank you guys so much. Big thanks to the moderator team, best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, Jay, and Travis. And big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, where these lives get published if you miss one. Hey, Wanpa. Hey, Wanpa, we just scheduled the next comedy night at Gonzo Bar Padil. Tell the wife, get a babysitter. It'll be the 28th of September. It'll be the 28th of September. And so last Saturday of the month, like usual, right? Last Saturday of the month, like usual. Also, big thanks to Vanetta Larrett, who has the Google Doc share where there are updated copies of our letters to Congress, the White House, and the Senate for the Americans here. And for anybody who's interested in contacting their own MPs in their nations, you might take a look at our email templates and adapt them for your own use. Did I forget anybody? Lars, who has the discount server, or the Discord server, and the Alexievich archive. Thank you, Lars. I did meet your American friend, Jackie Maddie. We had a very lovely lunch. She's getting ready to head back after her stint here in Ukraine. There she is. Hey, Jackie Bryant. No worries. But we had a very pleasant lunch the other day, talked about Ukraine at some length. And you're getting ready to head out on Monday, right, Jackie? Dawn patrols, I believe you and I agree with you. It is always nice to meet the people behind the TikTok handles. So yeah, Common Travel Guy, hit me up when you're in Kyiv. We'll get a pint or a coffee or something. It's Friday. Everybody's tired. I'm exhausted personally. And I'm worried. I am. I'm nervous. I'm really concerned that after 2 years of COVID and nearly 3 years of war, 3 years of the full-scale invasion, 10 years of war for these people, that the Ukrainians have suffered so much and the odds seem so against them, that Russia, with every advantage, who continues to press and oppress the people of this country. A year ago, 1 in 10 Ukrainians was in favor of trading land for peace. Today it's 3 and 10. People are tired of this. They want it to stop. They want their children not to be able to recognize an air raid siren. They want their children not to have to sleep in the bathtub. And who can blame them? But if anything is done to appease Putin, if he is given any opportunity to turn around to the Russian people and say, we won, now we're bringing the boys home. If he is able to claim 1 inch of ground, if he is able to hang on to Crimea, if he is rewarded in any way for his violent assault against his neighbors and the thumbing of his nose at every international norm and law, it's going to be a problem. He's going to come back again. If Russia is not defeated now, in this time, in this place, if they do not learn the lesson that the Third Reich had to learn, that Japan had to learn, Mussolini had to learn, if they do not learn that lesson, they are going to come back and do it all again. And if they have the opportunity to rebuild their forces, there is nothing to say that they will stop here in Ukraine. And so to avoid the opportunity that we have to defeat Russia in a meaningful way and appease Russia with something it can take as a win, I think is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. And while only the Ukrainians can set the terms of peace, I want to encourage our Ukrainian friends to not settle. Don't settle. There is too much on the line. Too much on the line, in my opinion. Okay, it's just about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. Yeah, and then there's other problems to take care of, Dawn Patrols, right? Like Transnistria, like Georgia, like Chechnya, like Tuva. There are other the Kuril Islands. There are other problems. That's the thing, Steve, right? It will be a green light to the mullahs in Iran and the Kim regime in North Korea and Xi in Beijing if he gets away with 1 inch of ground. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And I have a son who is about to turn 22. And I don't want to see his boots on the ground over here fighting Russians. I don't want to see it. The Ukrainians have done so much for the world here. If they could just hold on to a win rather than a not lose, I think it'll make all the difference in the world for hundreds of millions of people over the next 3 generations. It'll make a huge difference. The Russian people will never have enough, Roy. We cannot count on them for anything. They either support the war implicitly or they are too cowardly to do anything about it. You cannot count on the Russian people. The Russian people are like chickens. You can pluck them until they bleed, then you throw them a little bit of corn and they follow you. That's a quote from Stalin, if I'm not mistaken. Might be Lenin. I think it's Stalin. They are so ignorant because, A, they live in an information vacuum, right? They are only told what the Kremlin wants them to know. There is no free press there. There is no freedom of information there. They are held in an ignorance silo. That's number one. Number two, anybody who stood up to anybody in Russia for the last 600 years was murdered and put in a ditch. That's Russian culture, right? You don't say boo. That affects people. That creates a culture. You've got 500 years of serfdom, basic slavery. And then you've got 80 years of the most evil experiment that was ever conducted on human beings by other humans. And then you have 30 years of this nightmare gangster thug kleptocracy. The Russian people are sheep. They're not capable. They don't believe that there is anything true in the world. They have no moral compass. All that they have is a desperate need to protect themselves and secure their own survival, because that's all they have been able to do for 600 years now. So the Russian people, they will just keep walking into the meat grinder as long as Putin sends them. Hey, green, blue, white. I think Harris is going to win. I think you got that. Now, Pete here says, you have a former friend who thinks they are living in an amazing freedom. It's so crazy. I assume you're talking about a Russian. That's the lie that Putin needs his people to believe, right? That life is great in Russia. They have so much more than in the West. That democracy here is the same as it is there. That's the lie that Putin wants us all to believe. No, I apologize. You're right. Blue Ariel Silk says, it's not like they all believe it. That's because the Russian Federation is not a homogeneous group, right? You've got lots of peoples who were free and independent peoples until recently, like 100 years ago, say. The Tuvans, who are an ethnic minority in the Far East and who were conquered by the Russians, I want to say finally about 1876 or so. And so they have their own history, culture, language, and religion, and they remember themselves as a free people. And there's lots of people like that across the Russian Federation. It's a tough situation. It's a tough situation. But we cannot count on the Russian people, that's for sure. That's for sure. Guys, looking for sponsors of lives for next week. If anybody wants to sponsor a live, the PayPal is in the description. If you haven't joined the Patreon yet, I lost 4 Patreon subscribers last month and only got 2 new ones. So the Patreon is down. So if anybody out there can help out with any of that, it sure would be appreciated. I'm thinking I took 9/11 off, as I mostly have for the last 23 years. And so I'm thinking that I might do a live tomorrow night. So watch for me to be live tomorrow, and we'll see. It depends. If there's no news tomorrow, if nothing's happening, maybe I won't. But if there's anything happening, I'll almost certainly be live tomorrow night. Thanks, Arne. It's tough. It's funny. Some troll accused me of being a grifter the other night. And I thought to myself, I live on $1,200 a month, basically. What are you talking about? A grifter? If that's the case, I'm the worst grifter ever. And it is getting hard. It is getting hard living on that. Anyway, if anybody can join the Patreon, I sure would appreciate it. If anybody can sponsor live, I sure would appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Make it a great day. Thank you for being there for me. Because you are there for me, I can be here for you. Thanks, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. Sure appreciate it. Thanks, Robbo. Good night, Eli. And yeah, I'm not talking to Eli. I'm not talking to Ballerina. I'm not talking to Fitz. I'm not talking to the people that are always there for me. And there's a Cheyenne, Vanetta, the guys, the moderator team, Lars. Like without the team and the emotional support from Nightshade and Lars and Vanetta and Cheyenne, Jay and Travis, PT, without that emotional support, I would never have made it to here. So this is very much a team effort. And then on the other side, there are the bedrock kind of financial support that I get from people like Chris Carter, Blue Ariel Silk, Eli, Patsy Huff, consistent there every month on the Patreon. Arn is another one. Ballerina, Fitz, you guys, I mean, without you guys, I wouldn't be able to pay the rent most months. So it's definitely a team effort. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. All right, kids, make it a great day. Teamwork makes the dream work. You are not wrong, Cheyenne. You are not wrong. And you, green, blue, white, absolutely. I have right now, I have about 94 Patreon supporters. Those are just the big ones. Mr. Blah, blah, blah. I'm asking $50 for a live sponsorship. So anybody that can send $50, next week you'll get a live sponsorship. And I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, kids, make it a great evening. Like our boy, Common Travel Guy, I am going to get some sleep. Take care, everybody.